Hi there, I'm Eitan and welcome to WiX Fixer. In this video, I'll be showing you how to code one of these very handy multi-state box elements in WiX so that you can create something like this. So let's get started. Okay, so as I said, today we're going to be talking about multi-state boxes, and multi-state boxes are one of the most useful elements in WiX, but they are also one of the few elements that actually requires code to set up. So first, let me show you how to add the multi-state box to your website. So you're going to go over here to add elements, and you're going to look over here for interactive and add a multi-state box. So you can just scroll down and enter a blank multi-state box, sorry. And I'm going to make this just a little smaller so that it fits onto my zoomed in screen. And a multi-state box will be used to manage state. So for example, if we want to have a form which has several stages to it, or we want to have tabs that we can tab through, or any kind of changing of state that is not changing of our page. So we don't want to navigate the user to a new page, but we want our page to change between different views, or part of our page to change between different views depending on some kind of user action. So I'm going to set up a very simple tabs example, and I'm just going to go here to manage states, and I'm going to edit this state ID. I'm just going to call it tab 1. And I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this state twice, and you can see here that we have tab 2 and tab 3. And these are going to be our 3 tabs. And again, these could be different stages of a form or pictures you want to scroll through or something like that. And WiX has a lot of other elements that can deal with very specific cases, but multi-state box is the one which really gives you full flexibility for what and how you want to move between these different states. So we've added in our different states here. And just to differentiate between the states, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some text to each of the states. So I'm going to go over here to tab 1, and I'm going to add a simple text element. I'll make it just a heading 2, just so it's nice and big. And I'm going to call this just tab 1, so we know which tab we're in. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy this text, and I'm going to go to tab 2, and I'm going to paste it right over there and just change it to tab 2. And I'm going to head into tab 3 and paste it right over there, and we're going to have tab 3. Great. Now what we want to do is we want to set up a way to navigate between our tabs. So let's say I want to have 2 buttons, and one of them will be a forward button and one will be a previous button. So this button will be, we'll call this button next. And I'm going to go ahead and copy this and put it right over here, and this will be previous. Okay. And now we can head over to Velo and start coding out our multi-state box, because we need to use code in order to tell our multi-state box how and when to move between states. So I'm going to go here into our Velo code, and first of all, I'm going to call this tab box. Okay, I'm going to rename my multi-state box, and you can see that each of the states has its own ID. So the whole box has an ID, and each state has an ID. And I'm going to go over here, and I'm just going to rename my buttons to next button and previous button. Okay, now we can head over, oops, not just previous, but previous button. Now we can head over to our WiX API reference and check out the API reference for multi-state box. And we'll see here that there's a lot going on here. A lot of it is just the regular kind of element properties and event listeners, but we do have some important ones, and one of them is current state. So this will tell us which state the box is in at the moment, what all of our states are, and down here we have a special event listener, which is a special method, which is change state, and this will actually move between the states. Okay, so what we're going to do in here is I'm going to go and I am going to create an event listener for our next button. So I'm going to say next button dot on click. And what we want to do here is we want to move between states when we click on the next button. So in order to do that, we're going to need to select our tab box, and we're going to need to call the change state method. And in order to change the state, we just need to pass in the state ID that we want to change to. But in order to change to a specific state, we want to know which state we're in. So I'm going to say, first I'm going to figure out which state we're in. So I'm going to say tab box dot current state. Okay, so this should give us the current state, and I'm going to save this into a variable. So I'm going to call this const current state. Okay, so now what I need to do is go one step further, and current state, what it will return to us is the full name of that state. So it'll be, let's say, tab 1, tab 2, tab 3. But I actually need to figure out what number tab it is and not get the full current state. So I'm going to use the slice method, and that will give me just the last character in my tab, in my current state name. So I'm going to call this const state number, let's call it, and that will be equal to current state dot slice, and here I'm going to write -1. Okay, so this slice, and this does not exist on type state. Okay, so let's head over to the documentation and see what current state returns. So current state, current state, we need to tap into state.id and not just state. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go over here to state.id. And now our slice method should work. So the state number should return as either 1, 2, or 3. So what I'm actually going to do now is preview our code and just make sure that everything is working until now before we move on to the next step. So what I'm going to do now is do console.log current state and state number. So let's check this out in the preview. And let's click on our next button and we get tab 1, 1. Okay, so that's exactly what we wanted to happen. So I'm going to go back to the editor now, and I'm going to say that when we click on this button, so first we get what tab we're in at the moment, and then we're going to change the state to tab, and here I'm going to make a dynamic value, and this is going to be state number plus 1. Okay, and now what should happen is when I click on the next button, we should be moving to the next tab. So let's preview that. And I can already tell you that this isn't the end of the road because we're going to need to do some more fixing here because we only have 3 tabs. So if I'm adding 1 each time, eventually, okay, so we should have moved to tab 2 here, but that did not happen. So let's head back to the editor and let's see why this did not work. So we're changing the state and it should be to tab state number. So that should work. Let's go over to the documentation and double check that. So I'm just going to go here to change state. And yeah, this should change the state or the state ID. Reference. Okay, I'm going to go back here. And let's see why this is not working. Change state, tab, state number plus 1. Okay, let's console.log. Let's make a new constant. Let's call it next state. and this will be equal to this. And here we're going to put in next state instead. And we're also going to log next state here when we do our log. So let's check that out. So I click next over here, and that is the problem. That our number here is actually not a number, but is actually a string. And when we add another one to it, we're doing string concatenation. So we're actually just adding another one at the end, and we're not adding one to one. So what we need to do here is head back to the editor. And this state number actually needs to be a number. So I'm just going to wrap it here in this number method here. And this will change our string into a number. So now if I go ahead and preview, when I click next, you'll see that we're moving between the tabs. Okay, and when I click next and there's no more tabs to display, then it just does not move anymore. Okay, so I'm going to head back to the editor. And now that we got our next button working, let's work on our previous button. So for that, we're just going to need to add another event listener to the previous button. And when that is on click, we are going to do pretty much exactly the same thing, just instead of state number +1, we're going to do state number -1. So I'm going to copy this all over. And we can get rid of the logs here because we know that it's working. And if we really wanted to be very thorough, we could add a condition here so that we only add +1. Let's say if our tabs are small, the state number is smaller than 3. But as you saw before, it wasn't really throwing any errors when I tried to move to the next state. It just wasn't working. So it's really not a big problem to leave it as is. It really just depends how thorough you want to be and how much you want to foolproof your code. So here we have the same exact thing, but we just want to set up this to be -1. And now let's take a look at our state box. And now if I go next, so tab 1, tab 2, tab 3, and I go previous, tab 1, tab 2, okay. And this is one way that you could do it. And I could have done it that we go to a specific tab when you click a button. Or I could have done it that when I click on the state box itself, it changes between state. And it's really all just a matter of how you code it out and how you use these basic parts of the state box, multi-state box API, which is, I'm going to highlight them again, get current state, okay, tabbox.currentstate.id, and how we change state to another state. And it's really just a matter of playing around with that in different forms so that you can create your multi-state box. I hope you found this video informative, and I'm happy that I encountered some challenges here, and hopefully that will help you deal with some of the challenges that you will encounter when you're coding, because there are always challenges and always bugs. And if you like this, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.